Okay, so we want to talk today about the idea of really understanding your problem at a deep level. So at this point, you've taken, an attempt at drawing out this tree where you're mapping the problem and the root causes and the symptoms of that problem. But it's important to recognize right now that, you might not have done any intentional research or observation to learn more about this problem. So really treat this tree as kind of a first draft, but recognize that there's probably more research and empathy work that you need to do. So we're going to talk today about three different ways that you can build understanding about your problem. The first is by interviewing people, and interviewing people who have been affected by the problem or people who have expertise in the problem domain. You could also observe the environments where the problem occurs, or you could observe how people are interacting with the problem. We'll talk about some ways to do this. And you could also research how others and other organizations have solved similar problems in the past. Okay, so starting off with interviewing. Interviewing is a powerful way to learn about a problem because you get to hear about somebody's personal experience. So when you start to interview people, you should always make sure you're giving them some context. You're introducing yourself, telling them about the project, asking their permission. And then you should start to ask them open-ended questions and try and get them to tell stories. So if you're working on the problem of students being tired in school, you probably don't want to ask questions that are like, so how many hours of sleep do you get? So what size is your bed? So, how big is your room? Those questions aren't really going to be as helpful as asking for stories like, so tell me about your nightly routine. Tell me about the first hour, like the last hour before you go to bed. So you want to ask these open-ended questions, go for stories. And while you're doing that, you want to really listen and pay attention to their nonverbal cues, right? So this means that when you're interviewing people, you should be doing it either via Zoom or via Skype or FaceTime or via audio if need be, but you shouldn't be doing it over text because you're going to miss out the opportunity to understand and hear those nonverbal cues, okay? The other reason you want to be doing this, using audio or video is so you can ask follow-up questions and stay open to where the interviewee wants to go. So if you just send them a list of questions to answer, they may have a really interesting answer and you want to follow up on that and you want to ask more and dig deeper. So you want to also record these interviews. You should be taking notes, but recognize that you're probably not going to be able to write as fast as somebody is speaking. So you should ask to record the interview so you have the audio. You should take some notes and try and write down some exact quotes of what they're saying, but recognize that you can come back to the recorded audio to really get it all in there. Okay? So some really helpful question starters for interviewing are openers like, tell me about a time when, or on a typical day, blank, what's an example of, tell me about the worst, tell me about the best. These are questions that are going to get people talking and giving you more than one word answers. So interviewing is a great way to learn about your problem, but also observing is a really great way as well. So, if you were to observe this problem of students being tired in school and you're sitting in school and you're seeing people falling asleep and you're overhearing their conversations and you're hearing how they're, responding to other people saying like, hey, like, why are you sleeping? Like those, you're not interviewing any of those people necessarily, but just observing the problem in its native environment is a really helpful way to learn about it. So you can imagine other circumstances where you can perhaps visit a physical place to see the problem in action, or you could also visit a virtual space. So is there a Facebook group you can join, a forum you can join, where people are talking about the problem that you're interested in solving, and you can kind of be a fly on the wall and observe how these other people are thinking about it and talking about it. And then maybe eventually you ask some of them for interviews as well, so you can get more information. Throughout this whole process, it's really important that you document everything. So if you're ever visiting a physical space or even a virtual space, taking notes, taking pictures, writing quotes is very, very helpful. You can never kind of take too many notes or document too many things at the beginning because you don't know what's going to be helpful. When you're just starting out learning about a project, you're not exactly sure what your focus is going to be and what information is going to be useful and valuable in the future. So you want to have as many things documented as possible so you can go back to it once you have a little bit more focus and understanding. The last thing you can do to understand your problem really deeply is to research best practices. Now, for pretty much any problem that anyone wants to solve, somebody else has tried to do it before. So a good Google search is often a great place to start. So if you're interested in environmental education, Googling something like environmental education nonprofits, and then clicking through 10 different websites to find out, what's the focus of their organization? How do they do their work? Who do they partner with? That's going to give you a better understanding of how the industry works and kind of how existing organizations are operational. And they're not going to be perfect. You certainly bring something unique and valuable to the table, but you need to first understand, who else is out there and how are they trying to solve this problem right now. You could also look up things like financial literacy curriculum, see if there are other curriculums out there, or look up, other blogs, see if there are other bloggers writing about the same types of things as you. Um, and then Instagram's also a great place because of, the way that the recommendations work. If you're able to find some organizations to follow in a certain domain, you might get suggestions of other relevant organizations to follow. And that is another way to kind of discover other organizations and learn from their best practices. So in closing here, in order to solve a problem, you must first understand it from many perspectives, right? So there's this classic parable of, the blind people, they're touching the elephant and they're trying to figure out what this thing is. And based on what they're touching, they think it's something different, whether they think it's, the trunk is a snake or like the tusk is a spear. It's really important to get as many possible perspectives on the problem that you're solving, because if you only talk to one person or one organization or one partner, you're only going to have their perspective. So as you start to learn about the problem domain that you're interested in, I really encourage you to gain many perspectives, understand how many organizations are tackling this problem, because it's going to make you a better problem solver in the end. Awesome. And then by learning this, you're learning, who might want to partner with me? Who could fund me potentially? These are all really important things to know. Sometimes the best projects get started because you find a partner organization who's able to, put you in front of the audience that you want to serve. And then you should always know, what works and what doesn't work. Who else has tried this in the past and what have they learned, right? So awesome. And this is going to help you build out a more in-depth understanding of your problem and the map of your problem. So like we said at the very beginning, when you did this tree diagram, that was a first draft. Once you do the interviewing and the observation and the research, you're going to have a much more in-depth and a much better understanding of how your problem works. So that's all we have. Good luck doing your research and your interviewing and your observing, and let us know if we can help. Thanks, everybody.